There are moments in life when words strike us with an almost eerie precision, as if they were spoken directly to us and no one else. You may have passed over the very same words before, perhaps even laughed at them or found them unremarkable. And yet suddenly, in the middle of your own struggles, they arrive with such clarity and such force that they feel destined, inevitable, as though the universe itself has conspired to deliver them into your hands. This is the mystery of timing, the way a message finds you not when you demand it, but when you are prepared to receive it. We often imagine that wisdom can be gathered like coins, that if we read enough, listen enough, think enough, we will finally hold it in our grasp. But real wisdom is slippery. It is not simply a collection of ideas to be memorized and filed away. It is a recognition, a shift of perspective, a kind of remembering of what you have always known deep down. And recognition cannot be forced. You may search feverishly, read endlessly, strain with every ounce of effort, but nothing happens until the moment ripens. Like fruit that will not sweeten before its season, wisdom will not open until you are ready. Consider how often this has been true in your own life. Perhaps someone once told you something you dismissed outright, only to find years later that the very same words became the key to your freedom. Or perhaps a book sat on your shelf, forgotten, until one day you picked it up and suddenly every page seemed to speak directly to your heart. The words did not change, you did. Your life unfolded through joys and sorrows, through mistakes and triumphs, and at last you arrived at the moment when those words could land. The message was waiting all along, but you had to live enough to hear it. This is why the message you are hearing now feels as though it was meant for you. Not because someone has tailored it, not because fate has singled you out, but because your life has ripened to the point where it resonates. It is not so much that the message found you, but that you grew into it. And in that growing, the meeting feels inevitable. Just as the river winding through valleys seems destined to meet the sea, so your path has brought you to this very moment where these words and your awareness converge. We do not like to think of life this way because it challenges the notion that we are in complete control. We imagine that we chart our own course, that growth is something we can schedule and demand. But notice how your greatest realizations have come to you. Did they not often arrive unexpectedly, as gifts you could not have summoned? The most profound lessons tend to come uninvited, often in moments of despair or confusion, when you were forced to drop your defenses and listen with a new kind of openness. It is not that suffering is desirable, but that it humbles us, softens us, makes us porous enough for wisdom to enter. Think of the way the earth must be prepared before seeds will grow. The soil must be turned, the weeds cleared, the rains must fall. Only then will the seed sprout, not because the seed has changed, but because the conditions have aligned. And so it is with the messages of life. They lie dormant around us, unnoticed, until at last the conditions within us are ready. Then, what was once meaningless bursts into significance, as though it had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. And so it may be with the message you are hearing now. You could have heard these very same words years ago and felt nothing. You could hear them again years from now and feel something entirely different. But here, now, they strike with the peculiar force of inevitability. They belong to this moment because you belong to this moment, and the two are not separate. You and the message are the same wave rising in the same ocean, cresting together, inseparable. It is tempting to call this fate, or destiny, or divine guidance. And indeed, those are names we give to this uncanny harmony between inner need and outer event. But the deeper truth is simpler. Life is whole. You and the words you hear are not two independent things colliding by chance. They are expressions of the same unfolding, the same awareness manifesting as thought, as sound, as recognition, The timing feels mysterious because you do not see the whole pattern. You see only the fragment, the meeting point, not the vast web of conditions that made it possible. But if you could see it all, you would know that it could not have been otherwise. When you look back upon your life, you may notice how many such moments have shaped you. The chance encounter that changed your direction, the unexpected failure that opened a new path, the heartbreak that taught you compassion. At the time, these events seemed random, even cruel, and yet, later, you may recognize them as the very ground from which growth arose. The teaching was there, embedded in the experience, waiting until you were ready to see. The message is not separate from the life that carries it. Life itself is the teacher, and every moment is a lesson. So when a message arrives that feels meant for you, do not cling to it as though it were a rare jewel to be hoarded. Instead, see it as the echo of your own awareness, calling back to remind you of what you already are. The truth of who you are cannot be given to you, for you already possess it. What the words provide is only a mirror, a reflection that allows you to see more clearly. The resonance you feel is the sound of your own being, recognized at last. This is why the message feels alive. It is not information, it is transformation. It does not merely add to your store of knowledge, but reorients your vision, turning you toward yourself. And when you feel it strike, it is because the timing is perfect, because the whole of your life has prepared you for this recognition. Nothing has been wasted, not the failures, not the doubts, not the fears. Each has played its part in bringing you here to this exact moment where the message you were meant to hear becomes audible at last. The curious thing about messages is that they are never truly finished. Even when a sentence ends, the silence that follows carries its own meaning, and when a lecture concludes, the words continue to echo in the chambers of the mind, reshaping themselves into new insights long after the voice has faded. A message that finds you is not confined to the moment of hearing. It lingers, germinates, grows. You may walk away believing you have understood, only to discover days later that the understanding has deepened, that the words have taken root in some hidden part of you. This is why we must be careful not to treat wisdom as though it were a possession, a jewel to be locked away in a cabinet. Wisdom is alive, and to treat it as a possession is to kill it. What was once vibrant becomes brittle, what was once fluid becomes rigid, and so, to keep wisdom alive, we must return to it again and again, not with the expectation of hearing something new, but with the openness to hear it differently. The words may not change, but you will, and each encounter will reveal something fresh. Think of it like returning to a river. You may step into the same stream again and again, but it is never the same water that touches your skin. The current moves on, new waters flow in, and so each visit is both familiar and entirely new. So it is with the teachings that move us. Each time you hear them, you are not the same person you were before, and so they strike you differently. They find you again at a new depth, in a new season of life, and the resonance continues. The greatest danger is to assume that once you have heard a message, you have exhausted its meaning. This is the arrogance of the mind, which seeks to categorize and conclude, to say, I know that already. But the most profound truths are not things you know once and for all. They are things you live moment by moment, again and again. To say, I know that I am not separate from the world, is not the same as living with the felt reality of inseparability. To say, I know that all things change, is not the same as flowing with change in the midst of loss. Knowledge can be stored away, but wisdom must be renewed in each breath. This is why the message you were meant to hear does not end with the hearing. It continues as a practice, as a way of being. It whispers in the quiet choices you make, in the way you respond to frustration, in the way you soften toward yourself and others. It is not a grand revelation to be remembered, but a gentle rhythm to be lived. So let us return to the question, why does the message arrive when it does? Why not sooner? Why not later? To answer this, we must look closely at the nature of readiness. We often think of readiness as something we can control, as though we could prepare ourselves perfectly for wisdom to enter. But readiness is not an achievement, it is a surrender. It is not that you make yourself ready, but that life wears you down until you can no longer cling to your defenses. Readiness is the collapse of resistance, the softening of the shell, the moment when you can no longer maintain the illusion of control. Think of the way a seed must crack open before it can grow. To the seed, the cracking may feel like destruction, like death, but in truth, it is the beginning of life. So too with us. Our moments of breaking are often the moments of greatest possibility. What feels like the end is often the opening, the place where light enters. And it is in those moments that the message finds us, not because it was absent before, but because we are finally porous enough to receive it. This is why suffering, though painful, often becomes the soil of transformation. It is not that suffering is inherently good or desirable, but that it dissolves the rigid certainties we cling to. It humbles the mind that believes it has everything figured out. It softens the heart that has grown hard with pride or fear. And in that softening, the message can enter not as a doctrine imposed from outside, but as a truth recognized from within. Yet there is another side to this. For just as suffering can prepare the ground, so too can joy. There are times when beauty itself is the message, when a sunset leaves you breathless, when music draws tears from your eyes, when laughter reminds you that life is worth living. In those moments, too, the message arrives, not in words, but in presence. The teaching is not always a correction. Sometimes it is an affirmation, a reminder that the world is already whole, that you are already included, that nothing is missing. And so the message is not bound to a single form. It may come as a lecture, a book, a conversation with a friend. It may come as silence, as nature, as the simple act of breathing. To look for it only in one form is to miss its endless variety. The message is life itself, unfolding in countless guises, always speaking, always available, but only heard when the ear is open. Now consider this. If the message always comes when we are ready, then perhaps every message you have ever heard was the right one at the right time, even if you did not recognize it as such. Perhaps even the words you rejected, the teachings you mocked, the advice you ignored, played their part. They planted seeds that lay dormant until the season was right. And even your resistance was part of the process, for it shaped the path that brought you to where you are now. This means that nothing is wasted. No conversation, no book, no experience lies outside the web of meaning. Even what seems irrelevant or mistaken may reveal itself later as essential. The fragments fit together in ways you cannot see, and only in hindsight do you realize that each played its part. So too with this message. You may not grasp it fully now, but perhaps later it will blossom, and you will look back with gratitude that it was waiting for you here. But there is an even deeper implication. If the message finds you when you most need it, then you too may become the bearer of a message for someone else. Not because you have all the answers, not because you must preach or persuade, but because simply by living, you become part of the pattern. A word spoken in kindness, a gesture of understanding, a moment of honesty, these two can arrive with uncanny timing for another. You may never know it, but your life may be the message that someone else most needs to hear. This is why it is important not to underestimate the power of presence. You do not have to contrive grand teachings or prepare elaborate speeches. Sometimes your simple being, your willingness to show up authentically, carries more weight than any doctrine. For presence itself is the message that life is whole, that awareness is enough, that nothing is missing. And so we return to the heart of the matter. The message you were meant to hear is not a secret code hidden away in distant texts. It is the ongoing revelation of life itself, unfolding in this moment. As you listen, as you breathe. The timing feels uncanny because you are beginning to notice the harmony that has always been there, the inseparability of inner and outer, of self and world. The message is not separate from you. You are the message, embodied, enacted, spoken in every gesture. To realize this is to find a profound peace. For then you no longer chase desperately after answers, as though they were hiding somewhere beyond your reach. You see instead that the answers arise with the questions, that the teaching and the student are not two. You see that life itself is the teacher, and you are both the listener and the voice. And in that recognition, the urgency drops away. You can rest, knowing that nothing is missing, that what you need will find you when you are ready. So, perhaps the greatest message of all is this: trust the unfolding. Do not rush, do not grasp, do not despair. The words you need, the experiences you need, the lessons you need, they're all woven into the fabric of life, and they will appear at the moment when they can be received. Trust that timing, for it is wiser than your plans. Trust that pattern, for it holds you even when you cannot see it. Trust that life, for it has carried you here to this moment, where the message you were meant to hear has found you at last.